genre.
In the world of Hollywood, movies get greenlit and redlit. They get remade and rebooted. But we are the Ideal. I'm Sam Gasch, and you are listening to Ideal Remake. Thank you for listening to Ideal Remake. We take movies that either have been, will be, or should be remade and talk about what the ideal version of that remake would be. Today, we only have one thing on the menu, but it's a full platter. We hope you're hungry for the world-famous winner chicken dinner. And my excellent head chef today is none other than Shu Mason. So, Shu, is 21 a movie that has been, will be, or should be remade?
Yes to all three. Probably not in the ever remake thing, but it should be considered for it. I truly believe, and I hope by the end of this podcast that you also agree with me. And if not, we'll have a discussion. It's fine. We'll figure it out.
Great. Perfect. Hi, Shu. Welcome to Ideal Remake.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. It sounds like I couldn't have prevented this from happening if I tried.
You could not have. Remember how I tried to incept this idea into your mind in the parking lot when I was like, wow, if only someone had a podcast that talked about remake for movies, and if only someone was really passionate about this movie 21 that should be remade. Oh,
you were
that
very
would be so
adamant that I was like, I mean, you're all welcome to be on the show. And you were like, but 21 though. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, so it was a little bit more like a cornering situation, some might say, some might not say, but I had a lot of feelings about 21, and I'm making it everybody's problem.
Good. So before we get too far into it, Shu, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so that everyone knows whose voice they're listening to?
Hi, everyone. My name is Shu. I am a writer, actor, comedian, whatever, a multi-hyphenate. I live out in LA. I have met Sam through various screenwriting things, and I also am, you couldn't tell by my last name, Asian American. This will be important later on, so try to remember that. I know it's so easy to forget, but just try, okay? My background is mostly in improv comedy, but I'm doing a lot more drama. I, wrote a play, I do prose, you name it, and I probably have tried it at some point.
Hell yeah. And do you remember the first time you saw the movie 21?
I was trying to think back on it, and it must have been ages ago. Like, I have, the faintest memories because this movie did not linger. The movie itself did not linger, but the conversation around it did, is how I like to describe it.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's a movie that I don't think necessarily had a lot of staying power per se, mostly because you'll mention it and people will be like, what? So I feel pretty confident in saying that I don't think this movie made a huge splash necessarily, but I don't think
that's true.
Depending on who you speak to, some people might have more heated opinions about it than others, and there's definitely some easy hanging fruit on just casting things that we could have, just thought about, but
absolutely,
so yeah, I can't say that I remember exactly where I was when I first saw this movie, but I do remember the conversations around it, particularly, at that time. I was right around high school, college, that type of somewhere in that space. So I remember reading about this and kind of being, the movie was I watched it and I forgot about it. That was how that was.
Meanwhile, I remember, because this movie came out in 2008, I don't think I saw it in 2008 because I was in college at the time, and who can go see movies when they're in college? But I, in my privileged white background, saw the movie. I was like, this is fun. And I owned the movie on DVD. I don't remember how or where or why I picked it up, but I've owned this movie on DVD probably from the early 2010s. My guess is that I picked it up at the local Tucson used bookstore, Bookman's, and I remember really enjoying it. There's a lot about this movie that I remembered, and then rewatching it on Wednesday after at least a long time of not having seen it, a lot that I did not remember.
Oh, yeah. It is definitely a weird time capsule too, because when this came out in 2008, it came out at not maybe the best time for it. That was right in the middle of a recession number 2 for millennials. We're, for those of us under 40, we're about to hit 4 recessions. So, one of the many. What do you think
the budget of the movie was?
According to Wikipedia, it's $35 million, and it made $160 million.
Yeah, so that is a comfortable success.
Sure, especially because the guy who wrote this, Ben Mesrick, He wrote several other books that have been turned into movies. One of them was The Accidental Billionaires, which became The Social Network. And then there was another one that was The Antisocial Network, which became the 2023 Dumb Movie, which I saw in theaters.
Dumb Money.
Dumb Money, all right, that's right. Not Dumb Movie. Dumb Money, which I think had like $30 million budget and made like $20 million or something like that, of which I was $20 of. So, you know.
Dumb Money was the one about GameStop?
Yeah, it was the GameStop shorting, and the concept was interesting. It was a better movie than I think people gave it credit for, but it was also just like not right time, and it got sent to theaters to die. And so
Yeah.
I would say that 21 was probably, you know, in terms of like that kind of like adult mid-budget movie, probably would actually be considered a success in that regard, especially because I think gambling movies translate really well to overseas.
They do.
Right? Like Ocean's 11 did gangbusters all throughout the world, like that kind of like glitz and glamour of Vegas, which I don't actually know if it was actually portrayed as beautifully as it could be. That kind of movie does seem to capture a lot of people because gambling is an addiction worldwide, and I salute that.
In a good way?
No,
Pro?
no, just saluting. Just,
Oh, okay.
just I see it. It's there.
Recognizing it? Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because like gambling in particular is incredibly cinematic. Like there's a reason that like that's how we got reintroduced to James Bond.
Yes, absolutely. And a really good, because pretty much every culture on earth has some version of a card game, some version of a gambling game. It doesn't matter if it's dice. It doesn't matter if you're in like the smallest village in the world, the largest city, there is some form of gambling. So it really is very universal. It's also, you know, at least in America, very tied in that it's very sexy. There's a lot of drinking, there's glitz, and there's glamour involved, you know? And in the book, there's a lot of fights and celebrities. And so there is this whole aura around it, which I think probably contributed to people being interested in seeing the movie. Even if the movie did not necessarily, I think it just could have just upped the sexiness just a little bit, even though it had gyrating strippers. Like, I just think it could have gone a little bit harder.
That's like, yeah, I agree. That's like, yes, I think you're correct. Because like the thing about gambling in movies like this is that it's the wish fulfillment of an escape of you make all this money doing this thing and then you don't have to deal with any of your problems anymore. Right. And like that's the reason why all like Hollywood, a lot of the jobs in Hollywood right now are, hey, do you want to work on these verticals about someone marrying someone who's secretly a billionaire? And they're just like traps because people just want to pretend they don't have problems. And imagining you're winning at gambling is probably why gambling is as addictive as it is it's an opportunity for an escape. And like movies like this offer that on a silver platter of like, look, this could happen to you.
Absolutely. And so Vegas is, in the movie, Vegas is like the major setting. In the book, there's actually quite a few casinos and quite a few gambling things that are mentioned. There's like a Louisiana riverboat. There are reservation casinos. There's Connecticut is mentioned, Atlantic City. Like there are many different elements. There's also like this like fake seedy Chinese fake run casino underground thing that was completely made up and totally not real.
Like
whatever.
Well, like the one in the movie where the Ben character shows up, knocks on a door, and an old Asian man comes out and goes, "Oh, you're Ben? Come on in." And it's just like
that's
in
not
an
real.
alley.
Yeah, that's not real. And if it was real, they wouldn't have accepted a bunch of white MIT kids. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely not. But like we watch movies like God of Gamblers and it's like, oh, okay, it's just these random like you go to the back room of a bar or a restaurant or something and stuff's going on.
Yeah, the gambling element of it, we'll get into that. Like there's like a lot that goes into it, but the Vegas setting of this movie, which they focus on Vegas, which I can totally understand. I think that MGM actually gave them some money, some of the casinos did. And I think I read somewhere that they're like, they asked for some small things, like don't put in the actual like numeric numbers of like the true, there's actually quite a bit of math that goes into card counting that like didn't show up. Like the barest trace of math showed up in this movie, and most of it was correct, but also confusingly placed into context. I'll get that later as well. But Vegas is the sexy, fun thing, right? And they got the cinematographer that did this, like worked on Titanic and worked on like Charlie's Angels, and so like is very used to making
Russell
big,
Carpenter.
I would say. Yes, Russell Carpenter. I was actually looking for the name. He does like, he's very used to working with big sets, big sexy things. But Vegas kind of looks like not very cool. Like you have a couple of shots where they're shopping, but you know, the iconic images that we have of like Ocean's 11 or something when they're walking around and the big fountain scene at the end, spoiler, sorry, like that wasn't in this. And so Vegas ends up being kind of unsexy, which once again, there's actual literal gyrating strippers, which is also a key point in the book. Like, it's all there. And I was kind of like, there's a little bit more.
It doesn't cover the part of Vegas that I'm the most interested in.
Yeah.
Food.
Also that, yes.
Like, you have all this money for the first time, and all they do is go buy suits.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, for what though?
Right. And also, like, fights are a really big portion of the book, when I do think that is also important. Like, that kind of entertainment and using that to their advantage. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't in there. Like, that might have been a time constraint, or maybe they didn't get access to it, or whatever. Like, there's a million things I could have gone into it.
Like cage match, like gambling on fights kind of thing?
No, like big boxing matches. Like,
big boxing matches.
Yeah, like the Mike Tyson
which have never
fight.
Been fixed ever.
Not at all. Never. Every time you bet on one of those things, it's 100% totally
legit,
yes.
completely real.
We're gonna get kicked off of Gamblers Anonymous or something. But
it's the only thing keeping me out of the casinos.
We're gonna have to talk about this, Sam. We really will.
I'm gonna be okay. I just need one more hit.
And that is the power of Vegas, though, right? That idea. And I will say, to the movie's credit, the one line that I actually think they really did very well with this is when Kate Bosworth's character is like, in Vegas, you're anyone that you want to be. And that, I think, is a really key piece, because, you know, so much of the book is about, like, why is this character doing all of this stuff, right? And this character, we'll get into it, but, like, the character in the movie and the character in the book are just, like, completely different. And they've pretty much taken out a lot of the interesting things of the book to make this composite Ben Campbell character that is, like, paper cardboard thin, and I'm not 100% sure why he's ever doing anything.
Well, because he's the smartest kid you meet, but also the stupidest person you've ever met.
Exactly. And also, he's so smart that he got into MIT and he's into Harvard Med, but he cannot take a loan out for the life of him. His mom is able to give him $68,000, which, again, I went to the, like, U.S. labor statistic website to use their CPI inflation calculator, which $68,000 in 2008 would be $100,369.76 like today. Like, damn. That's a solid chunk of money for this woman who is supposedly, like, he's from a down, out of luck single mom family to have to give to MIT, which is also expensive. Like,
well, like, it sounds like he got a scholarship to MIT. Fine, whatever. But he's going to Harvard Medical School. You're going to be a good, well-paid doctor at that point.
Yes.
Presumably. So, like, that is exactly the sort of thing you get a loan for, because you get a loan for X number of years and you know you're going to be able to pay it back because you're going to be a doctor at the end of it.
Right. And also, I just can't get over the fact that I was like, if you're that smart and you're a straight A MIT student and you're able to do all this, you can work on Wall Street for a couple of years and then go back. You have all of these options that most people would not have. And I think that's where it comes down to. Like, they're trying to show that this kid is, like, really smart, and they're trying to show him that he's down on his luck and he has a single mom and all of these Hollywood signifiers, but none of it really adds up, because it ends up being a character exactly like you said, smartest kid, also kind of dumb, also why is he here, also what is the point of this movie, right?
He's like, paper intelligent, street dumb.
Absolutely.
Like,
right? And
what sort of person gets all of these piles of cash and then stores them in his roof? He goes through this entire movie having never heard of a bank. It's cash. You just won cash in Vegas. That's fine. Put it in a bank.
I know. There are sections of the book where they talk about, like, how do they put it in a bank, and that is also interesting, of, like, they can't put this much money in there. They find a special tax guy who specializes in, like, gambling, and I'm like, I have more questions about this because of that.
What does he think he's going to do to Harvard? Is he going to show up with a duffel bag full of cash and drop it off and say, one college, please?
Right? You know, the 90s were different. And that's the other thing. Like, this movie is meant to take place in, like, 2007, 2008. You know this because by minute 2, the iconic MGMT song, Time to Pretend, which, like, came out in 2007, came on. So this is a 2008 movie, all right? And by 2008, A, the gambling rules had already changed. Like, B, like, so much of it is kind of nonsensical at that point in terms of what they're doing. And yes, the bank would be a much bigger deal. You know, like, we were around for this time, so I feel comfortable in saying, like, I just had a lot more questions about
I
what
had
was
heard of
happening
safety
then.
deposit box in 2008.
Right. Like, these are things that exist.
Yeah.
But again, so the real guy that this is based off of, so in the book, his name is like, Kevin Lewis. And the real guy that was based off of is Jeff Mott. Jeff Mott graduated MIT, I think, in like 1994 or something like that. Like, and so this book didn't come out until 2003. And so it was written around, let's say, 2001, 2002. Right. And so we are really talking about a very different time and a very different world. And so smashing that into the modern day, I can understand why they did it. Maybe they want to do a period piece, whatever the hell. It does lead to a lot more questions though, right? Like, for instance, one of the key parts of this book is someone has to be Donkey Boy and like carry all this cash on them. By 2007, 2008, you can't really do that, right? Like, what do? Taking off your shoes and you just have hundreds of bills flying around? Like, it's not true. But in 1994, where you could probably carry, a crowbar and grenades through the airport, yeah, that might have been plausible, right?
But again, my question is like, they're going to Vegas. What place in the world is better equipped to let someone go to the bank and withdraw large amounts of money?
They addressed that they had to bring it with them in the book, is all I'm going to say. And my guess is that probably... My guess is that it probably is because they're like, oh, we don't want like a record of all of this. And there's also other investors that are in the book. And so they have the cash ready to show up because it's less traceable, is somewhat the explanation in the book.
So the movie starts with everything, or at some point they say everything we're doing is completely legal. And then they smuggle cash through an airport. If what they're doing is legal, clearly no, it's not.
Okay, so a little bit of history on this, because I did a lot of reading on this. So the golden age of card counting supposedly was in like the 1960s, 1970s. That's when that like very famous book came out. And this was kind of the less than legal times, right? There's a lot of stories of people getting driven out into the desert and people disappearing and back rooms where there's actual violence. By the 1990s, a lot of this stuff is already... there's PR machines, there's like other things going on. So they don't quite want to do that, right?
Right.
And so they have to address it a little bit differently. But that being said, money is money. How do you get money through? How do you do that, right? Cash is king. How do you smuggle that much money through? You can't like drive a car from Boston to Vegas in every weekend. So you fly, and it's one of those things where I'm like, I see why you're doing this now. But by 2007, 2008, that would be so ridiculous that in the 90s, I can kind of understand. Like, it might have been hard to move through that much cash or whatever the hell it is. But, like, a cashier's check might have been a lot easier for a lot of these folks.
But again, once again, get a safety deposit box in Las Vegas and then just keep the cash you're going to be using for that weekend. Like, you won all the money, take the part that stays in Vegas and leave it there, and then you take all the rest home. If you're going to be smuggling money, the only time you should be smuggling money is from Vegas back to Boston.
I'm sure that they have a thought about that. Because so this movie is about how a bunch of MIT kids were able to create a card counting group, a card counting ring, right? By the time that, this guy joins and Kevin Lewis is there, this has already been going on for a while. The first MIT card counting ring was like 1980, right? So this is like a decade plus into it. They have kind of perfected this for whatever it is.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so, but not only that, they're not the only game in town. There's multiple people, right? And they're getting help from people who were there for the golden age of card counting and have watched Vegas evolve step by step and going through it. Vegas is kind of the brass ring. Like, I mentioned a bunch of other stuff, but Vegas is like the top of the pyramid, shall one say? And that's where they want to get all the money from, is the top of the pyramid.
So, but that's a good point. Like, how does this movie begin?
Right. Okay. So the first 3 to 5 minutes are actually the best part of this movie, like, by far. Everything else that happens afterwards, I'm kind of like question mark. But like I would say the first 3 to 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, this is fine. This is great. Like, I can see where this is going. By like 1 hour in, I'm kind of like, okay. And then by the end, I was like, well, that was a movie. So it starts with the shadowy, scary foreshadowing, like, that conversation about winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's a phrase, a little cute little monologue, all right? They talk about hand signals. All this stuff kind of pays off at the end. So I'm like, okay, great. You put the foreshadowing paid off. That's what we were looking for in movies, right? Then it goes into the iconic Boston establishing shot of rowing, okay? Again, it is underscored by MGMT's 2007 song. You know, it's 2008. And it did capture college at that time, as I definitely listened to that song at college during that era of time.
Did.
Okay? We did, right?
Absolutely.
Okay? And then it goes into a scene where they interview with this like really well-cast dean who's very snooty and whatever for a prestigious scholarship of only one spot. And this dean is sitting there being like, well, you're a straight-A student, blah, 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 blah. How will you dazzle me? You know, how do you jump off the page? And, you know, and then we see Jim Sturgis, like puppy face, just being like, oh. All right. And then we move into the men's warehouse scene. And, you know, this scene probably is meant to show you that, like, this guy has no money. He's making $8 an hour as an assistant manager or something, or like a managerial position-ish at Men's Warehouse, which in 2008, which, by the way, is higher than Texas minimum wage of 2025, which is $7.25 today, just so we know. Okay?
Yeah, we made that comment while we were watching the movie, too.
Yeah, just okay. And so, you know, he has this, like, cute back room scene with his best friend who he legitimately has real chemistry with, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that, those are, though I could buy that as real friends talking about, you know, money, girls, scholar, whatever. Like, people are giving people a lot of shit. Everyone looks like a 25-year-old adult, but whatever. That's close enough, okay?
It is an interesting jump scare to be watching this movie and then, oh, Josh Gad's in this movie. Okay.
Yes! I forgot that he was in this movie.
Yeah, I did too.
Great. Like, he plays a really great friend who's just like, you know, there and like a support character in, out, excellent, you know?
He is a little skeezy, on the nose, nerdy guy who's like, haha, look at these women, we could never talk to them. Like that sort of thing is like, oh yeah, you definitely betrayed me and all of that, but you got to sleep with the blonde woman? I need to hear all about that.
Absolutely. My answer to that is, Sam, do you think any part of this movie is subtle? Like any part of this movie? So
no, I have a lot of questions about a lot of different parts of it, but yeah. So
right?
so basically, Ben, whatever his last name is a student
Campbell.
at MIT, and he's so smart. He's like just breezing through all of his classes with straight A's.
Right.
They do the whole like, let's make a deal goat problem, which I think is the first time I ever heard it, or was the second or something. I don't remember. And like, I understand the math behind it, but I've always thought that math was stupid, although it is technically correct because it's like theoretical.
It is technically correct.
Yeah. Like,
why was in a non-linear like equations class? That's a stats question I don't understand, right? But like I can see that they put math into it. Like for his birthday cake, there's like a Fibonacci sequence on it, and I'm like,
really?
Yeah, and I was like,
great.
I was reading stuff on it later, and I was like, I think it's correct. Like I think they got that right. Like they're trying, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can see them working. You can see the mechanical wheels turn. And, like, I don't mean that in a bad way. Sometimes in movies, you're kind of like, okay, I see this, I see this, I see this.
Well, so the movie that happens, he's very, very smart. He does this really cool and interesting smart thing. And then he gets recruited by the professor of that class, Kevin Spacey, to go be a part of the secret MIT gambling thing. And what ends up happening is the first 40 minutes of this movie is basically training the audience how card counting works. And I think one of the big credits of this movie is that it gets an audience who knows nothing about anything like this. And it gets them to a point where they recognize and realize things are happening. So that when it goes off the rails later, people are like, don't do that, you idiot. Clearly you split the eights and you count this and a +4. That's not good enough.
Right. The math element that they're trying to portray is correct. I think that they were trying to show, like, with this math equation, he's smart. Why are they having like an incredibly basic stats question that I had in my high school in a non-freshman year college course at MIT? I don't know, whatever, they're doing it, right?
Look, it's not Good Will Hunting over here. It's 21.
Right? That's different Boston movie, you know? But there's like classic tricks that they're using to show the audience like this guy is smart. They're saying insert famous mathematician here. This guy's better than this guy. Well, that guy's dead for 200 years. So ha ha, little joke. It's a little hokey, but I think this movie like aims for hokey, so that's fine. The professor is intrigued, you know. Campbell goes into it. And this is where I think it actually does get interesting. So I clocked the beginning of this movie. And so he gets 2 denials, and he technically doesn't agree until 27 minutes in. 27 minutes in is when he actually agrees to go to Vegas. And I was like...
Oh, yeah. He is refusing the call hard.
Right. And a lot of movies do this. The Matrix famously did it 3 times, though I will say The Matrix did it like by upping the ante differently. But like the first one comes at 22 minutes. And so we have full 20 minutes, which is to get to the first trial. Like this is a heist film. You know what I mean? Like how long did Ocean's 11 take before we knew there was a heist? And the way the main character is drawn, he's a smart kid just down on his luck, got to Harvard Med, needs $300K. And if you ignore everything of it, whatever, it feels very long by the time it gets there. I will give this movie credit. They have this nice Kate Bosworth moment where she goes and she's like, let me just readjust this tie on you. And did I buy that it took a pretty girl 1 minute and a touch of this guy's chest to get him agree? Yeah, I totally bought that 100%. One. Right? Every guy in college I knew had a shirt they bought because they were at a store and a girl said, you look good in this. Bam! Instant buy. Okay? We're now in minute 27 of this movie. And I was sitting there just being like, wow, this is like a really long wind-up that I don't think this character as drawn is necessarily needs, right?
Right.
And then the rest of it would, some people would say the rest of this movie is classic. Some would say predictable. Haters would call it cliche. No one said this is an Oscar film. This podcast is called Why Pan's Labyrinth is a Perfect Movie. Like... oh, we're gonna fight later. Okay, that's fine. But like the rest of this film is a little bit like check box, check, right? Eventually the team blows up. Ultimate villain is Kevin Spacey. There's a subplot about software replacing people, and a behind the scenes terrifying pit boss consultant played by Lawrence Fishburne, who is Lawrence Fishburne, and serves as another antagonist, but one that has a twist at the end. Like it. I can see that there were a lot of parts that went into this movie, and maybe it is because it had 2 different screenwriters that were kind of like, it might have been cobbled together a little bit more. I don't really know. But by hour 1 on, it becomes a movie that you've already seen and that you probably know the answer and the ending to. So it becomes a little bit easier to be checked out, in my opinion.
Yes. That said, I am going to go through the individual steps of the movie because I presume there are people who are listening to this who have not seen 21 or haven't seen it for a long enough time.
Oh,
so
okay.
Basically what happens is Ben gets recruited by Kevin Spacey and he says, no, I can't do it. I just can't. And then Kate Bosworth is like, but what if I was within a couple feet of you? And he was like, well, then I'll do it.
Yes.
So basically, he then gets trained to learn how to card count. And like, there's a whole system of how card counting works, which is very cool and interesting. It's math. It's why they recruited the math guy. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to train in a podcast how you card count. I'm just going to say you learn how to card count. Mm-hmm. And then they go and they do a test game at a random alley in some like underground thing where he gets a bag over his head thrown in a corner, and they demand to ask if he still knows what the count is. He says yes. He says the count's like plus 16 or something. It doesn't matter. I'm like, all right, cool. You kept a calm head under pressure. Let's rock and roll.
Right. The other thing I'll say this is that they make everyone else on the team seem so incompetent. I'm like, why are any of you on this team? If none of you can count, like, why are any of you doing this? Versus, like, in the book, the 2 people who actually recruited him were students. And those, like, they dropped out because they were making so much money off of card counting. And they were so good. And there were multiple scenes being like, and this guy would be having a total casual conversation out of his eye. And he could tell you not only the exact card number, which, like, the actual card counting of the film seems to match one portion of the card counting correctly. There's a couple of different values that they also did, which make a ton more sense, like taking into account probability of how many decks there are, or keeping track of how many aces there are, lots of these other things. But anyways, they're doing this to make Ben seem super, super smart, but they do end up making the rest of the MIT team seem incredibly stupid.
Well, it's like their job is to be there to count and relay information. Like, they're the scouts. But I think, like, fundamentally their job is way harder. And it's also, like, part of the issue with the movie is, like, it's way oversimplified because fundamentally, like, you have to sit there and watch the deck for a long time and hope that it's a hot deck. It's not like it's an inevitability. Like, it could never become hot. And so people are just hanging around waiting to get a signal that may or may not ever happen. Basically, anytime Ben walks in the casino, he got a signal, hey, cool, let's rock and roll. Let's go make a bunch of money. But I bet that happened 1 in 10 times, 1 in 20 if they're lucky. Like,
there are many passages in this book that talk about that specifically that I think are really important, because the actual math of it is you have a maybe 2% chance advantage over, like, actually speaking, 2% advantage. max. And they had all of these like tables because they're MIT dorks and they run all these simulations and they're like, here's how you do it. But the thing is, on a long enough timeline where you have enough money or you can like, average it out, like if you can do that long enough, you can make it big if you're strategic about it. The book ends with a chapter from the actual guy who is, the main character, talking about the actual math of it, which I thought was actually one of the more interesting chapters. And I actually wish it came earlier because he, this guy has gone on to do a lot more gambling, sports related, MIT stuff or whatever.
He won the World Series of Blackjack or something in 2004, something
Maybe
like that.
There are multiple people that were in this book who have made names in either the gambling world, statistics world, startup world, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There are multiple rival houses in there's, like this team that he's on is actually called the Reptiles and the other ones are called the Amphibians. Like it's all dorky, and the math of it is not shown very much because it is very much a grind. Like there is a portion in the book that like where he's calculating how many hours of blackjack he's playing and it's in like the 44,000s.
Of course it is. It has to be.
Yeah, just in Vegas alone, 44. Like this, they're walking around. He also starts at the bottom as a spotter, and then he moves his way up. And so,
and
they
do the spotters have to start? Do they have to start on a fresh deck? Do they have to wait for the decks to get changed out, and that's when they sit down? Because otherwise, how do they know that the cards didn't get played before the person sat down? Like I feel like you have to start with a fresh deck or a fresh series of decks, is however they work.
It seems to depend because apparently a bunch of casinos do it differently. And so there are like house rules for that, right? For one of the reservation casinos, after two MIT teams hit them in the same weekend, they completely changed how they played. And you could not come in mid deck, basically. You had to come in at the beginning of like a fresh shuffle or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
So, every single casino seems to have done it a little bit differently and they would have to adjust accordingly to it. And that's also part of it. The ultimate, if nothing else that you take away from this podcast, the ultimate point is that card counting is actually an incredibly complex and difficult thing. In the book, they talk to people who work in security and they discuss how some of the craziest things that they've ever seen. There was one guy who had radioactive isotopes and would put them on cards and had a Geiger counter. Okay, that's how he was card counting. Someone else was putting like different, like using solutions to put dots on specific cards and that could only be seen with a specific glasses. One guy put this woman said like microchip computer at the end of gloves and was tapping his like hand on it. It was on the table and it was connected to a computer somewhere. And I don't know if she understood it or I don't understand if I understand it, but card counting is legal technically, but the way that you do it has to be very specific. If you do it purely mathematically, it's legal. But if you use any other means and it affects the game in any other way, it is illegal. You can technically wind up in jail, right? But
in jail if you're lucky with Vegas.
That's right. But like what they're doing is technically legal, and what they're doing is they're playing probabilities, and they're most importantly they're doing it in a group. They had 3 different levels. They had spotters who are kind of just like everybody. They're betting the table minimums. They had these people they called gorillas, and these were just like people who were like blasting like big amounts, And then there were people who were big P's, big players. They come in, they play, and they're betting specifically just to try and win. And they come back at the end of Vegas and they divvy up the amount. They give some to the investors, who is the professor, which is an amalgamation character, whatever it is, and then they go home. And they end up anywhere, their returns are between 12 and 25%, which for investment is awesome. Like,
yeah. That's unheard of in investment.
Yes. Like they say multiple times, they're like, imagine having that kind of return on Wall Street, right?
Right.
And so the math of it is really simplified in this, but the math that they do show is correct. They did have a word system for that. And one of the funniest parts is like, they were like, well, what kind of sentence do I say? And it's like, you could say anything. And I'm just trying to imagine a bunch of MIT kids taking improv somewhere at Comedy Sports just being like, how do I say a sentence with the word cat in it? And so it sounds normal.
I have to figure out a way to say sweet. Oh, man.
Right. And so,
Whatever.
it's...
But yeah. So basically we spend 40 minutes, 50 minutes of the movie building up this whole system so that the audience understands what's happening. And then we get to Vegas and they start winning at gambling. And then at that point, it becomes exactly like you say. It's the kind of standard, like, I'm winning and I'm succeeding at quote unquote gambling in Vegas. And basically that's immediately good. I've been a poor college kid my whole life. I'm learning what it's like to have money. I'm buying fancy clothes. I'm not eating any goddamn food, which is all Sam wants to see in a Vegas movie.
Absolutely.
But they go on. It goes to their heads. One of them is jealous of how good Ben is, and he almost tanks it for everybody, and he gets fired. There's no more Fisher. I don't know who's going to take on Deep Blue now, which is a good other nerdy joke. It's a chess joke, you see.
So
There's this character named Bobby Fischer, and
no. different movie.
It's too much. And like it goes to their heads, and eventually like Ben is so focused on gambling that he drives away his friends of Miles and Cam, and he abandons them when they need it, and he gets stuff wrong in their robot competition, and so they kick him out. And he's so overwhelmed with the emotions of being abandoned by his friends that he goes back to Vegas and gets drunk, and he loses all their money because he's an idiot. And then he goes on, and Kevin Spacey's like, that was my money and you're going to get it back. So the next day they go try to get the money back, and he's like, not like this though. And Kevin Spacey turns them into Lawrence Fishburne. Ben gets captured by Lawrence Fishburne. They don't know what happens to him. He gets beaten up, and then Lawrence Fishburne tells a story about how the Kevin Spacey character, Mickey Rosa, found out the day that Lawrence Fishburne was burying his father, and on that day he went to the casino when he knew it would be unguarded, and he took like millions of dollars from the casino. And like Lawrence Fishburne wants his revenge before he gets taken out of the system himself by computers. And so
that's a huge side plot too, is the computers are going to replace people, because this is technically true.
Yeah.
In the old days of Vegas, they used to have a glass mirror, and they would have people like walking back and forth surveilling you, and then obviously those got replaced with actual cameras that could do things. And so he's the last of the humans, the last human consultant, and every other casino can't. And I can see what they're trying to do here, but it does kind of create this like an entirely different movie subplot that could have been just Lawrence Fishburne himself doing this.
But that ends up working to the movie's benefit, because the way they get Kevin Spacey to go back and do this one last hit with them is they're like, look, the computers are coming in and they're working. We're not going to be able to do this anymore because computers. So we have to do this now. We need another big player, and you're the only one who can do it. And Kevin Spacey just loves his fucking money. And they go in, they get him, and it's basically this whole big setup so they can turn Kevin Spacey over to Lawrence Fishburne, but Lawrence Fishburne also takes the money from them. But it turns out it was a triple bluff, because Ben got his two friends, who are also pretty smart, to go to Vegas and gamble while they were the distraction. So they ended up with a little bit of money, and they're going to be okay, these incredibly smart people. And then he goes back to the dean from the beginning, who's like, I need something to dazzle me. I need an interesting story, and that's why I give a scholarship to. And he's like, all right, that's my whole story. Was that enough razzle dazzle for you? Cut to credits, explosion, walk away, sunglasses.
Yeah, and that's how the movie ends. And I'm not gonna lie, the ending, especially that scene, was a little disappointing for me, because I was like, did I spend this entire movie then just watching someone trying to get a scholarship into Harvard meant that they gave to a Korean kid with one leg last year? Like, that is to me like a little bit more narratively unsatisfying. So like the whole time he's been narrating for this scholarship. This guy says he goes to Vegas 17 times. He wins hundreds of $1,000s, gets it stolen twice. He ends with, how's that for dazzling, or something. Yeah. All right. I was kind of waiting for the credits. I'm not gonna lie at this point.
But also fundamentally, what is the period of time that this took? Because presumably there's a first interview and a second interview. They're weeks or maybe a month apart. Did all of this happen in the space of a single month?
Right.
Why was he going back for a second interview now?
Right, or was it the same interview and he just had to really think and became a different person in 2 minutes as he talked about this? Which, I don't know. We're sitting here just being like...
No, because he talks about the interview when he's chatting with his friend later. Like, because when he's hanging up clothes in the rack, he's talking to Josh Gad, and he's like, I just got to dazzle him. I don't know, man.
The follow-up interview. You're totally right. Okay, look, not every movie has to have a point, okay? But I think a lot of good movies, even the comedic ones, kind of do. It doesn't have to be poignant, right? And like one of the ways that you can like look at that is you look at the first and the last scenes, the first foreshadowing, and then it's the interview, whatever, right? The end is him talking to a dean and being like, how's them apples? Sorry, different from Boston.
It's one of the things that annoys me, where it's like, I'm just a nerdy guy at the beginning who can't get laid and all this other stuff, and now here I am at the end, and I'm the coolest guy you've ever known. Fuck you, I'm out.
Right? And this... It is very hard for me to be like, okay, we just watched like almost 2 hours, basically, of here's how I, a straight A student at MIT, got into Harvard Med, almost got lured into gambling life, but I survived. And here I am telling a dean about how I almost developed a debilitating gambling addiction, but I didn't, and may have possibly put my nonlinear algebra professor in the hospital, which I have to work for one day. Like, that's it. That's the point.
For which there will be no ramifications. It's not like we're all still at the same school.
Right. Like, and he might have died. Like, we don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and that's why the last lines are, did I dazzle you? Did I jump off the page? And then you can't always get what you want plays in the background. And I sat there and I was like, okay, so that was this movie. And that's why I like barely remember this movie. Like
it's wild.
Watching this movie, I was like, okay. Again, the beginning setup, I was like, I can see the wheels turning and I can see the movie that I was intending. And then, I don't know, I did not love the Fishburne edition because I thought it was interesting enough on its own. And to juxtapose that, I get what they were like, oh, it's like the ending of the times, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't think that a serious gambling person, like, everyone has been shown that they're like, they don't care. They're going to gamble anyways. Like, this is like a true lifestyle. That's not going to stop them. And it didn't. In real life, these people continue to do so.
Which the movie also implies.
Right.
But more importantly, I agree with you.
Why does he walk away, right? Why did this character progression thing happen? And I just found it, like, really unsatisfying. And so that's when I ended up reading the book. And just so everyone on the podcast knows, I'm holding up the book, Bringing Down the House by Ben Mesrich, and I have like approximately 50 little bookmark tabs on the side because they're color coded. Some of them are for quotes, some of them are for facts. I think. All right,
so then tell you what, I'm gonna let you go. What are we gonna do? What is our remake of 21? And no, we're not calling it 22. Continue.
Okay. I think we have to think about what made this book interesting, right? And that is where I think we have to begin, because the story that this is based off of is actually super fascinating. 21 was made in 2007, released in 2008, loosely based off the 2003 book Bringing Down the House, and it's a real life story based off of 90s group of MIT students who were able to clear millions, blah blah blah. The part that I think that it expands on is they were able to do it from riverboats, reservation, casinos, blah blah blah. And the part that I think is really interesting is the main character, right? This movie, the book actually takes place over 4 years. And so he's I think a sophomore, and then he's like a year or two out. He's still young, but the difference between your 20 and 24, 25 is actually sizable. And I do actually buy that. Versus this guy in the movie maybe did a year, maybe not. I'm not sure, right? There was a passage of time of showing snow and stuff, but not enough that I can definitively chart it out, I think, based off of one watch. So for 4 years, this guy was a card shark, and he plays with some guys that he looks up to. He's recruited by these guys, Martinez and Fisher. They dropped out of school to do this, and Fisher was supposedly the genius boy, smartest math whiz ever, and he just dropped out. No one knows why, and you don't know until the end of the book. And throughout the course, you watch his spiral into this gambling addiction. And so, he breaks up with his adorable, sweet girlfriend to date a cheerleader on a professional football team. He has to lie to his parents that he's very close to. Every weekend for years, he goes to Vegas, Louisiana, and they have shifts. So, they start playing in the evening, and there's a shift that ends in the early morning. There's another shift that ends from 6 to 11 or something like that. They're trying to take advantage of when there's less people on the floor. And so it's very strategic how they go about this. He makes so much money that he pays for his friends' meals in hundreds of dollars because he has so many of them. He runs into this deep, he doesn't know what is real and what is not, who he is and who he isn't. He's like a Batman conundrum. He's sitting there being am I Bruce Wayne or am I Batman? But instead of fighting crime, he's fighting the Bellagio, okay? He ends up getting audited by the IRS twice. His teammates get assaulted. They're chased by cops. Their money is stolen. They realize there's multiple teens, and not just from MIT doing this. He realizes his life is empty except for the money. And then, spoiler, he walks away. It's actually said within the first 3 chapters of the book, so I don't think it's super spoilers, but it's a surprisingly, it's a character-driven book that is a heist and a thriller. I can totally see why this was launched into the stratosphere and it was New York Times bestseller. This is Mesrick's 8th book, his first foray into nonfiction. Mesrick is also a guy who, as I mentioned before, did like Social Network and Dumb Money. He is a really accessible writer. He's able to convey really complicated things like the true value of a deck, which is where you take into account lots of the other things of how many decks there are or whatever it is, and you're able to basically like plus minus like one, base it off of it. He's able to convey that better than I can on this podcast. And he's able to convey it to the average audience in a way that is simple and keeps them engaged. This is not a knock. It's actually very hard to find in nonfiction. I read the book in a couple days and probably would have done it sooner, but I had like so many notes to take down. All right.
And again, for the record, I told Shu she did not need to do that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm on the Department of Labor Statistics, CPI, trying to figure out how much money was in 1991 versus here.
Which is great. It's appreciated. You did an amazing job. You get the gold star. You get your A+.
Thank you. That's what I needed.
Again, for the audience listening, I didn't ask for this.
Sam is being attacked once again by Shu's really weird insistence on this movie. All right.
But okay, that's all cool and that's interesting, and that makes the book seem fascinating. But obviously, we can't do all of that in our movie.
No, but I think it's important because, like, some of the key portions of this book that I think did not translate well is, for instance, why? Why the fuck did this guy do all of this, right? Here's an excerpt. Yeah. Why, I had asked Amaze. I is the author. He does self-insert him in some of this. Kevin never answered my question directly. Over time, I've tried to piece together an answer of my own. Kevin had been part of something incredible. He and his friends got away with one of the biggest schemes in Vegas history, and nobody knew a damn thing about it. Telling the story was his way of reliving the experience in a public forum. It was a way for him to prove himself and to anyone who cared that it actually happened. More than that, it was a way for Kevin to come to terms with the choices he made, the decisions that led to his double life. This is the emotional crux of this book, and this is not translated into the movie at all. We're not even getting to the casting, okay? The emotional core is fundamentally different. And I know everyone thinks my major beef with 21 is the casting. They are correct. But also, casting is important because it informs the point of the book. The biggest question is, why would a bunch of super smart kids going to one of the few schools in America whose graduation means you're set for life, whose diploma is a name fucking brand, why would they do this? Why would they risk it all when all of them could be making a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I can see the work. I can see that, people doing this, according to Wikipedia, one of the screenwriters, Loeb, he also is a debilitating gambling addict who was brought in to give real life gambling terroir and realism. Like, this guy was selling or shorting Tesla stocks in 2019 and, quote, lost the equivalent of a 3-bedroom house. I see the work. I salute it. Not approving, just salute it. But without that emotional crux, the main character is a thinly... Dude, it could have been anyone. Like, this movie could have been about anything. It could have been about Hollywood Fringe. It could have been about improv. It could have been about anything. But I think that this movie functions better when it's really specific, right? You can do that via casting, writing, cinematography, or whatever. But, it is a little generic, and generic is not the same thing as relatable. And ultimately, I'm sorry, but super smart kids at MIT taking money from Vegas via a complex system of math, that's fundamentally unrelatable for the middle class of America.
No, but gambling is more relatable to more people than it ever has been. There is more gambling happening in this country now than ever before with all the different sporting betting apps. To the point where I have a friend who was at a UCLA or USC football game last week. And he was there specifically because he was hired by one of the apps to go in and log what was happening in the game as it was happening, like to the point where yardage gained, this, that, the other thing, because there was an X number of seconds delay and they needed to make sure they got the information as it was happening when it was happening so that they could do these people who were making all of these micro bets. And I feel like if you want to make this movie now and you want to make it relatable, you have to say, here are these people who are going to make more money just in their regular day-to-day life than you will ever make, and they are doing all this gambling. And if these, the smartest people in the entire world, lose everything doing it, then why are you, like, you also will lose everything. Like, I understand that gambling is a risk, but it's a mitigated risk by the companies, and you will lose. So the point of this movie is, if these people lost, so will you. And this is how dangerous gambling is. It takes these people who could potentially have everything and they lost everything. That's how dangerous gambling is. Yes, even if you're spending $5 to gamble whether or not they gained 3 yards or 4.
Yeah. And that is a great morality tale. Is that the sexiest version of this movie, though? And my answer would be, well, no.
it's the sexiest version of this movie when you take sitting around in your underwear betting on an app and you say, hey, let's go to Vegas instead.
That's fair. And the like nowadays how we do like sports betting is legal now in a way. And so
Which is crazy.
right? And so now you can bet in your underwear, like you said. You can bet on your phone. You can take a shit and you can lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. Though hopefully not, right? And so more people are able to do betting.
That's why you need better fiber.
You know, you're right. That's really the key. That's what I think people don't understand. Doctors are right.
Eat the money.
Here we go. But like that emotional core is not, like, I don't think that even if we made this into a morality tale, like gambling is bad, which is definitely the message of both movie and like a lot of the book is also like very real with how much these people have gambling addictions, right? The smartest kid in MIT drops out. And at the end of the book, he said, like, I never told you to the main character why I dropped out. And the reason why I dropped out is because I'm a card counter. That's who I am. Like they start defining themselves based on this, right? The language used to describe gambling in this book is very much either a sport or a disease.
Yeah.
And that is the, you know, like he literally says.
So what are we going to do for our movie?
I'm trying to explain the background because it's important. I think that you have to be able to portray betting as it is. But I just fundamentally don't think that betting the way that they did it in this like smart ring of MIT is meant to be relatable to the masses. And by making the main character super relatable, you have actually dumbed down the entire messaging of it. And you've made this movie a lot less interesting versus I think if you stuck to the actual premise of it, and by that I mean casting, changing it up, having more math, I don't know, like a lot of other things, I think that you could have a better movie because it's going to be truer to a more interesting story, which is smart kids doing dumb shit.
Well, because that's where I think we need to begin is like, I think we need to start by Ben looking at his bank balance and seeing how low it is. And then we also get like a rejection letter of you were rejected for this scholarship. You didn't get the scholarship. You have basically no money. What are you going to do? He goes to work.
That's one way to do it. I don't think you should need the money at all because I think the more interesting part of this is like, I don't think this is a rags to riches tale. This isn't, I know, I just saw you going like, ooh, okay.
I just hit the microphone.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, wow, you had a strong feeling about that. This is, I think, like this could be an entirely different story, right? This is someone who has it all. The book character went to Exeter. His parents love him, all right? He's standing at the top of a mountain going, is this it? His parents were like both half Asian, expecting him to go to med school. His sisters all had great jobs. They would go get married. They would have kids. This is a guy who's saying, is this all there is to in life? I got straight A's. I'm in fucking MIT. I'm acing all my classes. I'm taking pre-med to get my dad off my back. Like, I think this is a story about a smart kid who's really
it's less
fucking
rags
bored.
to riches, more thrill seeker?
A little bit, yeah. I think he's someone who's like literally, he's looking at his life and saying, is everything that I've ever done, this is it? I've climbed the mountain. What do I do now? Right?
I mean, if you're looking for something that's less relatable, it's someone who has succeeded in every aspect of their life and wants for nothing. I think that's less relatable.
That's what I'm saying, though. I don't think this is not meant to be a relatable story in a lot of ways. This is still a bestseller, though. People are fascinated by that kind of like Ivy League life, right? They are looking at this in the same way that I think they looked at The Social Network of like, this is a really elite area of life. I don't think that the key to selling a movie about the elite status of something is to make it super relatable to the middle class because that fundamentally goes against that.
All right, fair enough. And like we said at the beginning of the podcast, like a lot of the reason why these things are successful is because they are escapism. Yes. It isn't rags to riches, it's aspirational. And you spend the movie telling the audience this is aspirational. This is the best thing a person could possibly be and do because look at how much fun they're having and all of that. And then we get into the morality play of it all. But like basically like if you were treating it as aspirational of like this is going to be the coolest thing someone's ever going to do. This is the coolest summer I ever had. This is how I discovered my true purpose and had the best time of my life. Then yeah, I agree with that. So then all right, cool. So that means we have to start with him being an aspirational figure. He doesn't have a stupid job. He is like, but we have to start with something that establishes who he is.
Right.
Did they go to MIT? Is that a real thing that we're sticking with?
Yes. I think this is not meant to be a real story. And, you know, the author has said, like, hey, I've taken liberties with it. It seems like the real life person has been like, I didn't necessarily want my exact name on there. So, but I do think a really key portion of it is MIT because it has that elite thing, right? Like, here's how I would start with this. Like, I would start with a kid who aces his ACTs. He gets great scores on his SAT. He graduates. He's top of his class. He gets his diploma. And he walks around and he's just like, and that's it. He's at the top of everything. He's like mildly athletic at MIT, whatever that means. Like he's you know, he's popular. He has friends. He has a girlfriend. This person has fucking everything. And he's looking around. And over sushi, two dudes who dropped out of MIT were able to convince him, you want to go gambling?
All right. So
that's nuts.
So we have to start. We have to start with this dude who has everything, which means that my casting for him is going to be wrong, but that's fine. I started with a very meek guy so that we could make him cool, but like I said, we'll get into that.
Okay.
The basically we have to start with a person who has the girlfriend, the job, the friends, the community. And I don't think we need to start with the ACT because if this person's succeeding at MIT, it's been a few years since they took their SATs. And I'm going to be honest, Shu, doing well in your SATs is not cool.
I don't think this guy's necessarily cool, but I do think it's cool an example, at MIT.
It's an example that you used, and I'm sorry to have to let you down like this.
Oh, man, I find out now? God.
I mean, look, I think my 1290 on my SATs are technically, because I scored well over 1600 when I took the SATs, because it was that time they had that extra section.
I was like, wait a minute.
Like, I got a 2020 on my SATs. Cool.
I know. I think that, like, okay, maybe we don't need, like, a test score, but something to show, because I do think it's very important to show that, like, these kids are probably good at math, especially because, and I just remember this, like...
I think you do that by having a class at MIT, and he's teaching it, and then the professor goes, yeah, that was a good presentation. It was better than I could have said, so I guess you get an A. Did everyone else take notes?
Yeah. The boredom of being so good. One point I do want to think...
Which we both are well familiar with.
I've never been good at anything in my life, but Sam, I feel like you've been good at so many things.
I've been good at 3 things, and one of them is that tray of cookies over there.
Oh, nice.
And the other 2 are both card games.
Are you a card shark?
No, I played Yu-Gi-Oh!
You had me going in the first half.
So
maybe he's really good at Yu-Gi-Oh! You know, no, I'm kidding.
I won a regional tournament. I did very well.
Wow, I didn't realize I was talking to a superstar.
I mean, look, I try to keep it on the DL. I try not to make a big deal of it.
Wow. Incredible. We're not the right people to be making this. We want to go
or
to Vegas
are we
for
the
food.
most right people?
That is very true. Because we're looking
How do you want to
Oscar
start the
from outside
movie,
in.
Shu?
Sorry, MIT. He's at MIT. I also think it's really important to be at MIT because he kind of loses in the end because there's so much shit from other people at MIT.
You don't have to convince me. We're at MIT.
Okay. Also, the surveillance camera and everything that's all set up. A key point is it's like connected to MIT. So MIT gets him in there and it fucks him in the end. I think that's a key point. Anyways, so he's at MIT. Okay. And then the biggest thing. He has to be Asian. I am so sorry, but he has to be Asian.
I realize we haven't actually said that in
You're
this
right.
episode until this moment. I was going to say, yeah, obviously. But it just occurred to me now. We haven't really said that.
Wow.
I went through and I looked at the characters and they're all of Chinese descent. And so I made sure that in my casting, a bunch of actors of Chinese descent with the exception of Jill, who is in fact a blonde white woman.
Right. And this is a really key thing. I'm going to read you one more excerpt from the book because I think it's actually another reason
and then
why
can we make the movie?
Important. This is important, all right?
Fine.
Okay. All right. What exactly is our profile? Kevin, the main character, asks. Martinez took the ball. Non-Caucasian for one thing. 21-year-old white kids with million-dollar bankrolls raise a lot of suspicion. Asian, Greek, Persian, the kind of kids you see parking their BMWs outside of an Armani cafe on Newberry Street, that's who we're looking for. Gambling is an Asian obsession. And nobody lets their kids run as wild as rich Persians and Greeks. Walk around any casino and the people throwing down purple chips are almost always dark-skinned. Ugh. Card counters, on the other hand, are usually white men with glasses. We use one stereotype to trump another. Kevin knew Martinez was right. Nobody gambled like the rich Chinese and Japanese tourists from Hong Kong and Tokyo. And a 20-year-old white million-dollar player stood out like a torch in a casino. Casino personnel had a very simplistic view of the world. An Arab with a $1 million bankroll was the son of a sheik. An Asian kid betting $1,000 a hand was the heir to the Sony Corporation. A woman in a pretty dress could never be a card counter. It's true, Mickey added. One of the best card counters I've ever met is African American. Wears the gaudiest pimp outfits I've ever seen. He plays alone, bets like wild, raising and lowering from $5 to $5,000 right under the pit boss's nose. And nobody ever suspects him of anything because the casinos simply don't believe that a black man can count cards. Their own racism turns around and bites them in the ass. Pimp outfit slander aside, this is a key point of the book. They are actually racially profiling other MIT students to get them so that they can pass this like Vegas, threshold idea of who is a card counting. So it is actually fundamentally important to the movie of why these kids could not be white. Right. That being said, the casting for this movie, like historically speaking, was wild. Like one of the producers literally said, believe me, I would have loved to have cast Asians in the lead role. But the truth is we didn't have access to any bankable Asian American actors that we wanted. Which is wild because Sturgis was a relative unknown when they cast him. He was in, I think, Across the Universe, which came out later that year.
Yeah.
These are also 2007, The Namesake was there. The next year, 2008, Slumdog Millionaire did Bananas. 2002, Better Luck Tomorrow with John Cho, which is a great indie film, by the way. There were Asian actors available, right? So I'm not going to buy that they couldn't find anyone. I do buy, though, however, that people did not think that Asian actors were bankable. But in our 2025 remake, we're going to have Asian actors. Part of the thing is that the main character, he is mixed race. And so, I think that opens up a little bit more doors in terms of who they wanted. And they specifically say of him multiple times, he played like a Japanese tourist one night. He played someone from Hong Kong the other night. He played all of these different roles because there's a lot of acting involved. Let's also imagine MIT students taking acting classes, doing, hard methods and really just learning. That'd be an interesting thing to add to this movie. No? No? Sam's shaking his head.
Look, the movie's pretty full enough as it is. We can imply that they're taking improv classes and acting classes. But we do not need to take the time to show it. We still haven't figured out how our movie begins, Shu. Shu, how does the movie start?
The movie begins with MIT. You said no to a test score taking, so he's at MIT. He is top of MIT. His class.
How do we show that he is this big, top of his class, successful person? I pitched the idea of him kind of taking over for a professor and teaching. How are you showing that he is this aspirational person already at the beginning of the movie?
I would say it would be a scene where the professor comes in and is just like, you have all failed me once again. I have set the curve, blah, blah, blah. Only one of you was able to do it. And everyone is looking around and, the Ben Campbell or whatever name we're giving to this guy, Kevin Lewis, looks at his test. He gets 100%. He just turns it over, shoves it in his backpack and goes back to sleep. He's in a hoodie.
Can I make a pitch on that?
Yeah.
It's obviously we did the whole test and you all failed me but there was I would have loved to have curved this, but obviously someone here wrecked the curve and got 100%. And I want everyone in the class to be frustrated and look back to where this person should be sitting, except it's an empty chair because this person is off jet skiing with his girlfriend. Because he doesn't need to actually attend class. He's so smart that he just knows this stuff already.
Absolutely. I actually like that one a lot better.
We set up that we're going to be meeting this really cool, smart kid, and he doesn't even need to bother showing up to class. He's that good, and he's already wrecking the curve that bad.
Yeah. He's got everything. He's fine. He's so fucking bored. So when two people, and I do actually like the scene that they were at sushi because it is an impressive thing of them dropping money and being oh, do you want to come and see how we're gambling? These are two older upperclassmen who dropped out of school to do their own thing, who still party occasionally with undergrads. I can see a younger student being okay, this is all right, I'll show up. Yeah. And for him to go in. I do also think it'd be cool to have him talk to someone, another friend of him, and be like, yeah, man, I didn't want to be fucking recruited to this. Something about that seems weird.
I do think, I think the Josh Gad character, I don't think we need the second friend, but I do think the Josh Gad character is important because we need to have someone that Ben can talk to. We need to have the bounce off character so that he can have a conversation, so he can externalize the thoughts that we can't experience. That's the purpose of the friend character. And so I think that's good.
You could also do a girlfriend and just have that girlfriend and have her have that breakup even matter more because she's just really nice in the book. And I was like, oh, that's good.
Hell, we can make it a boyfriend. We can do whatever we like. But
you're right.
God forbid we put a second woman in this movie.
I know. That wasn't the other part of this movie where the female characters, there's this, a sex scene with Kate Bosworth. You were like, what?
Yeah.
What? Okay. Not because I don't think that romance is a fun part of it. It's just one of those things where I was just but why?
Yeah, fair. And I'll rephrase, a third female character in this movie, because there is also Kiana. She's important and relevant,
Yes.
and she'll be fine. But yes, I'm perfectly happy gender swapping the best friend and making that the girlfriend. I think that's fair and reasonable.
Yeah.
But then we also lose the joke that you liked of Kate Bosworth showing up and like getting all up in Ben's face and being like, so do you want to do this thing? And he being like, yes.
I know. But then again, that implies that he's like a geeky person who's bad with women. And it turns out he's actually decent with women. He's able to pull a fucking cheerleader on the fucking, like, an actual professional sports team. Though they do have that kind of, like, Vegas relationship where he just, like, flies in, takes her out to shows or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
well, it's also the, like, if you want this person to be aspirational, like, as you said, he's doing it because he's bored, not because a blonde woman is trying to convince him that this is the only way he'll ever be cool. He's already cool.
That being said, I do think that is a very realistic thing. So when people do put that there's like a hot girl told me to do it and the guy does it, I'm like, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so he gets recruited to do this thing. And I do think the first 20, 30 minutes of the movie need to be the training montage. It needs to be the Eye of the Tiger. Here's how we learn how, like, first 5 minutes, look at how cool this guy is. He's so cool. He's so interesting. And I think that the professor's TA, the one who comes in and said someone wrecked the curve, that TA can be our Fisher and our Choi or whoever are the ones who go and recruit Ben, because they're the ones who see that this person is so good at this, and then they go track this guy down and they're like, oh, this guy also has charisma, and that matters for what we're trying to do.
Yes. I would also like to add a couple of flash forwards and backwards, because I think one of the things that I was for the movie, like when you take 27 minutes before you even think about Vegas or like even the card counter, like Vegas doesn't show up until like an hour-ish or something in, or 45 minutes in. I think it'd be cool to have him show like the future version of himself, like already card counting, and like do a flashback of like this is how it began, because it might be nice to contrast like this is like the zenith of where he is and like him beginning. That will complicate it, and that slightly puts it into is this a mini-series or is this a movie thing? But I think we can do it.
Well, it has to be a movie because that's the premise of the podcast. I also am not a huge fan of jumps backwards and forwards in time because I think that they're potentially sloppy, but I like it if it's serving a narrative point. Like, I feel like you can do the thing where a 10 gets dealt out, a 3 gets dealt out, a 4 gets dealt out, a 2 gets dealt out, another 3 gets dealt out, 21, blackjack.
Yeah. Like, I just think that this movie, if we're going to make Vegas a center point, which I am fine with, and I think that's, like, actually one of the theoretically better parts of this movie.
It needs to be Vegas.
Vegas needs to be front and center, and the sexiest part of front and center. And that is, like, you're winning, you're doing all this stuff, and then you kind of see this beginning. This kid's, like, super smart, whatever. He has this, like, you know, cute girlfriend. He's getting recruited. I do agree with you. There has to be a training montage. So the scene where they talk about the like the values of like the actual like +1 -1 is like really quick. It's actually within like 2 seconds. Kevin Spacey has like that one quick back and forth thing.
Yeah.
I think they're probably in an ideal remake, there would be a little bit more of that to try to explain, like, one of the things that I think this guy talks about is, like, he trains for hours a day, and he, like, the teacher figures, like, you have to do 2 hours a day minimum. And so this guy's playing with 6 decks, right? And so I think what would be nice is they explain...
I think we get to do that simultaneously. Like, if we're going to be doing that, we have the training arc happening at the same time as his first time at the table. And as he's at the table counting all the different cards, we're going back and forth in time so that we're getting the training of what these different things mean as he's making his first gambling decisions.
I agree. Because that way you're able to see both the training, but you're also able to see the time arc of, like, how much better he gets. And he can kind of pretend to play the same bumbling guy, but, you know, just at the end, he wins that hand. The other thing I think is important to show is, like, they do a lot of tricks. Like, for instance, he talks about how he doesn't just do one, and then the way that the card counting and numbers work really simplistically in the movie is that, like, lower cards are, like, +1 and face cards are, like, -1, right?
Yeah.
And so what they do is they do it in pairs. So they do, like, the sum. So if they're like, oh, like, you know, there's a 2 and then there's like a queen, that's a net 0. And they're a lot faster that way, right? Because speed is also a huge portion of it. You have to do this in real time as people are shuffling and doing shit. And you have to also be able to do it while acting and things like that. And maybe that's where we have our acting class and our improv classes and their vocal coach. You know what? It's fine. Well, we can cut that out in the end. But
well, I mean, here's the thing. if Vegas needs to be the character, needs to be happening, and you want to do the back and forth, all of these things that need to happen, and if you don't want to necessarily have a training sequence, then we need to have the training sequence and the background of what's making these things happening, and it needs to happen simultaneously as it's being used. So like if he shows up and he's in a hat and a mustache, we have to watch him go to a makeup class. Because again, if this whole thing is aspirational and he's this cool, interesting guy who gets so far in because he's bored, all of a sudden he's being introduced to all these new different things and new experiences that he's going all in on. And so he's going to learn the counting, he's going to learn the acting, he's going to learn the improv, he's going to learn the drinks and everything that he should be like ordering and pairing and all of this. He learns the layouts of the casinos, and he should be going through and learning all of those things until we get to around the end of Act 1 where he's learned all of that, and all that's left, because there's nothing left to learn, is the gambling. And so then we get into our Act 2 of him going full in on the gambling, because fundamentally, are you familiar with the Tetris syndrome?
No.
So it's a thing called Tetris syndrome, where if you play a lot of Tetris and like you're trying to go to sleep, you close your eyes, your brain is still playing Tetris and still imagining all the different blocks going into the different things. It happens with other games too. Like if you ever did Neopets or something and played any of those games, and then like you remember like you might be trying to go to sleep and like your brain's still trying to process the games.
No, I believe it. I play a lot of Tetris. Yeah, that tracks.
Well, but like they also talk about how it's good and it's bad. One, it's like it's your brain still trying to solve the problem. And when you get so good at Tetris that like the people who can play Tetris easily and without thinking, they don't get Tetris syndrome anymore, because it is their brain doesn't need to solve the problem anymore. They already know what to do in each of those situations. The other thing about Tetris syndrome, and this is a bit of a non sequitur, is that if you're someone with a lot of anxiety, they talk about how oftentimes it's a good idea to intentionally give yourself Tetris syndrome, because it's better for your brain to be processing Tetris than whatever was making you anxious before that. So I listened to this whole like interview with someone who talks about how like intentionally walking into Tetris syndrome was a good way for people to fall asleep, because then they were just thinking about Tetris instead of whatever things they said wrong during the day. So as someone with anxiety, it certainly helped during the pandemic. I liked it. But I like the idea of this person gets to a point where he processes all his information. He is very, very fast. He learns everything very, very quickly. But fundamentally, like, as you said, it's so complicated. There's this numbers and that numbers, and there's this way they shuffle the deck and that way they shuffle the deck. There's so much to process at every moment, at all times, that that we can introduce it and make it seem as simple as just counting a card. This is plus, this is minus, this is that, this is the other thing. And we also have to, but then like we can make it more, like he keeps adding more and more complications because it keeps being a problem that he can solve. It is solvable, but it is also endlessly mutable and complicated. And that's what just keeps dragging him further and further in, because he can't perfectly solve it.
I like it. Yes, that is both a way to show that he has become very obsessive with this, right? And a way to show that, you know, he is continuing to work on it and it just consumes him, because it does, right? This is a guy who like goes every single weekend from fucking Boston to Vegas and is spending like literally is awake for like 48 hours essentially, right? And, you know, comes back. And so that's, I think, like that's Act 1, right? Act 2, we show what happens then, right? And one thing that I wish that the movie had shown, and that I didn't realize until I read the book, is how many famous parties and shit, how many celebrities he meets. He hangs out with fucking, like, Michael Jordan at some point. He hangs out with Howard Stern, like, Kevin Costner. Like, there's tons of name dropping of random people in here, right? People who go to Vegas at this time, tons of Hollywood starlets or whatever it is. Like, he is seduced by Vegas. So we must be seduced by Vegas, right?
Yes.
And the first half of Act 2...
Vegas, there is always something to do, and as someone who is thrill-seeking like that, he doesn't want to miss any of it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he sits there and he's like, okay. And not only that, he thinks he's gaming the house, right? Like, he's winning, quote unquote, in his mind. And they do have like really crazy returns, right? Like those would make any investor be like, that's nuts. So he's rises through the ranks, you know, and now he's a BP, he's a big player, and he is able to throw down money. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's at the top of his game in Act 2. And I would probably break the Act 2 into like two halves.
Yeah, rising and falling.
Yeah, he's meeting all these famous people. He's having great times. If they have to have a sex scene because someone needs it, he can do whatever, right? Strippers do feature in the book, so yeah, why don't we have that in there, right?
I actually thought that the stripper idea was very clever.
It's in the book, and that's a real thing that they did.
Something happens. There was a crazy guy. I don't remember what happened. I think it was this is when Fisher like got drunk and like messed with Ben, and some other like
It was a big
gang
thing.
boss showed up, fired a
Yeah.
gun in the air. They're going to clear everything out. They're going to cancel all the chips, and they need to turn in all their chips, but they can't do it because it's a lot of chips for them to turn in. And they go to the sex workers and say, hey, we'll give you a cut if you cash all these in. They do it, and it's great. I actually think that scene is very clever.
Right. The actual thing in the
It
book
justifies
is
the
even better.
strip club.
Yes, I liked that scene also because then, sex worker, I just wish that they featured more sex workers like actually having speaking parts and not just, background gyration of boobies. I think that would be cooler because there's a very smart sex worker character in the book who talks about, like what she does, and she talks like she's 25, but she talks like she's like 45 and like really bitter about it. And that
I've
is
seen
really
some
interesting.
shit, kid, that you wouldn't understand.
Exactly, right? So in the book, that's from the Tyson fight. And he goes downstairs and he's like, because he wasn't feeling well, he's like, what the fuck happened? They're like, Mike Tyson fucking bit someone else's ear off! And like, he's like, what the fuck? So like, I can understand why someone's like, okay, maybe we don't want to include, as historical of a thing as that. But I will say this has to be in the 90s. Like, this has to be a period piece. This could not happen in 2025. This has to be
I
like
agree. Yeah.
a past thing. You could even set it in the 80s, like, but it cannot be past 2000. It can't be after 9/11 is how I feel.
I think that's fair and fine. I'm perfectly happy setting it in the late 90s. That's great.
Yeah.
But okay, so basically, like Act 2
That does
begins
happen.
like
Yeah.
absolutely like all of these different things. You're hanging out with you're getting all of the doors are opening for you. That having this kind of money and success and confidence opens. But then there needs to be something at the midpoint that makes it start going the other way. And I genuinely think it can be what happens in the movie as it is. It's like he's spending so much time away that he doesn't have time for his girlfriend back in Boston. Yeah. And she's like, look, this isn't working for me anymore. Like, you're not present. You're not a good partner, and I'm ending it. And like,
I think we should make him worse. I think we should have him like talk up this like hot girl, like cheerleader, whoever, who is giving a very hot woman has come into his life. We talked about not having that Kate Bosworth scene before. We can have it now.
Absolutely.
And he's like, oh man. So he breaks up with his super sweet girlfriend at the airport.
You think he should break up with her?
Yes, because I think we should make him worse, because that is how you make that fall more important and more like he has more agency. Like the Ben Campbell in the movie doesn't seem to have like things happen to him a lot that he's reacting to. Someone steals his money, right? It's kind of only in the last like third act and like maybe taking that choice that I really feel like he was doing stuff. Otherwise, he's reacting to other people around him. And I would love to see him be someone who's more like, I'm going to make my life worse. I'm going to develop the gambling addiction.
Here's my pitch for that.
Okay.
Love that. Let's do that. He breaks up with the girlfriend because he is high in his own supply. Mm-hmm. He is so confident that you can then have this thing where, because remember, this whole process takes a long time of he gets bored, and instead of waiting for the signal, he goes and sits down at a table, and they're like, yeah, I can't believe that we're all still alive. +5, got it. And we're just like, no, man, that's not good enough. And it's just like he was bored. He's like, I got it all figured out. I'm just that smart. And he'll like win a little bit, but then lose. And then like that just keeps happening of like him circumnavigating to the point where we eventually see him like one of the people from the group was at the table. They get up and they leave. And he's like, they couldn't figure it out. I got this. And he goes and sits down and big man's his way into losing all of his money. So instead of him being upset about being broken up with, he's so overly confident because he sees himself as such a winner that like he's so smart he can figure out any situation, and then he just fucks it up.
Yeah.
And that's how we get out of Act 2.
Yeah. The other thing I would start having too is a couple things. I would start having like the heat start going around him. He starts noticing that people know him a lot more, right? Because that's always a big fear, right? So like the walls by the like midpoint of Act 2 after the breakup starts like kind of like closing in on him. He starts seeing the same faces, and so people start seeing him, and they kind of start like saying stuff, and he's just like, I'm not sure, right? At some point the team has to stop staying in the same hotel as they are gambling, because they realize if they get kicked out of gambling, they go upstairs, and that's technically them trespassing, and Vegas people can throw them out, right?
Yep.
So something like that. The other thing I would have is I would have more female card counters, because I thought this was super interesting. Like the girl that he ends up dating. let's have her be a card counter. Like,
Right.
he was like losing at first, and all of a sudden she helps him out. And so he asks her out, and she's this hot girl, and she's like, yeah, I'm a cheerleader, but you know, she's like, I come here because I'm so bored. And they connect. And that's why he breaks up with his cute girlfriend back home who comes to pick him up at the airport. Like, yeah. Oh boy. So, you know, they're dating, right? The heat is coming in, and the team does start falling apart. I do like that, because that is also exactly what would happen with a bunch of smart kids and a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So there is a feeling that, like, hey, why is this like Mickey Rosa guy? He's having all this money. He's taking a huge cut. And also at the same time, like, Fisher Martinez, the two dudes that recruited him in the book, start chafing a little bit. Like, one of them starts developing a much deeper gambling addiction than the other, it seems like. And he's like, well, I'm going to fund this, right? So they split off and they start making their own team. That, I think, is actually a really cool point. And there's also hints that maybe, like, one of the other female, like, players was, like, sleeping with the teacher. Like, it gets messy.
Yeah. So, but basically, like, we have a point where, like, as he's going and, like, being this overly confident gambling person and going to the tables and, like, not taking any advice, we can see the people like, well, if you don't need me, why am I going to take all this risk and potentially because the rest of the team is also aware that the walls are kind of closing in around them.
Yeah.
And so, like, that is how we get into Act 3. So I guess the question I have for you is, do you want this movie to end on a positive note or a negative note?
A little bit of both, because ideally we'd have a lot of character progression. But here's how I would start Act 3 about that. I would start Act 3 with them being like, we got to start branching out of Vegas, maybe. They try to go on, like, a Louisiana riverboat, because I think that's actually really cinematic and kind of cool looking.
Sure.
They get their asses chased out, because guess what? A bunch of Asians in the middle of Louisiana in the 1990s was a different ball game, you know? Mm-hmm. Right? And they start seeing, like, and they go to a different reservation, and they like, at some point they see like a fax come in with, like, possibly their faces on it. Like, the walls are closing in so much faster. It doesn't matter where they go now. It's not just Vegas.
I mean, do you want to get really cinematic?
Yes.
And do you want them to blend in?
I don't know where you're going with this. I'm really curious.
Let's send them to Hong Kong.
They don't talk about international, but that is true. Yeah, send them to international.
Like, if
different game.
It's a different.
Oh, actually, that's not true. They go to the Bahamas, and they almost get roughed. They get roughed up by people, and one dude almost, like, gets the shit beaten out of him. And they're like, "Hey, man, you know, like, I know you're with the casino, whatever." And they're like, "Who says we're from the casino?" And they say a line implying that they know them from Vegas. Like, the world is really small, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's have them go international and have their asses kicked.
But, like, it's even more like, not because traveling to Hong Kong is going to take from Boston is going to take days. Yes. And so, like, you get to have, like, they abandon so many classes for that, to the point where, like, you miss an important test. And you go to Hong Kong and, like, we can't be in Vegas anymore, so let's go to some place where we can really blend in. Go to Hong Kong. And, like, they try to do the gambling thing, and it doesn't quite work out the way they want it to. And to the point where you can't really escape Vegas, because all of these different casinos talk globally. Yes,
exactly. Everybody knows everybody now, because by the 1990s, like, the internet is real, their faxing is real, you know, like, it's different, right? They don't, like, really have cell phones, but they do have, like, house phones. It's funny.
Here's my suggestion for an all is lost moment. Mm-hmm. They're in Hong Kong, they get found out, they get beaten up, and all their money gets taken, and now they're stranded in Hong Kong and have to figure out a way to get home. And so whatever 3 or 4 of them are left have to get shitty jobs at a restaurant, at this, that, the other thing, so they can cobble together enough funds to, like, actually make it back to the United States.
I would say, instead of that, I think they should call their old teacher, and have and have him bail them out.
And so what's the deal they make with the teacher in order for the teacher to buy them tickets and get them home?
They'll be like, we'll go back to how it was.
Yeah. And then that's when we get to have our one last thing, our big final encounter.
Right. And it's not gonna go well, and there's a lot of implications that, like, Fisher, like, and other people are going through, like, even deeper steps of gambling addiction. And so the main character, the Kevin character, the Ben Campbell character, is looking around. By this point in the book, he's, like, graduated, and he's just, like, kind of, like, bouncing around. He doesn't really have a job, and people are like, but he does end up, like, with a 9 to 5-ish, like, as a startup, right? And they're like, you're not committed enough to the team. And he's like, what are you talking about? I've given everything to the team. I've recruited for the team. I've done all of this stuff. And they're like, no. We need to go deeper. Like, I know that we got our asses kicked. I know that we did all this stuff in Vegas. I know that all of this stuff happened. But, like, we're not going to give up, because we're not going to let the house win. And that's a moment when he's just like, we're in too deep. The house is always going to win. Like, that is the mathematical probably like that is the mathematical endpoint of all of this.
You can have him doing the, like, you can always have sequences of him doing the math, doing the math, doing the math until finally he gets that moment and finally equal sign no. And like some like final thing of like the house always wins because that's the whole point of being the house. So here's my pitch for the end of the movie. Okay. My pitch for the end of the movie is he's giving a speech, he's doing whatever. He's like talking about like this incredible thing that he had to do and like did and this life experience that he had. And he considers himself the greatest gambler of all time because he walked away having completely broken even.
I love
He had it all. He lost it all. He made it back, and he's exactly where he was, where he started, which makes him the best gambler because if he had a little bit more, he'd want more than that. And if he had a little bit less, he'd want to crawl it back. But because he goes back to exactly where he was, that's how he knows he can walk away.
Yes. I think because that's the thing. Like he ends, and that's how the book ends too. Like the book ends is like he goes back to Vegas and immediately gets called out. He goes with the author and he's just floating in a pool and he's like, yeah, I had a good time. And that is the character progression.
Yeah.
It's not that this guy is like, oh my God, I got into Harvard Med School. It's I'm at peace with myself because I went through this character journey. I was at the top of a mountain. I said, is this it? I climbed a higher mountain. I was like, nah, man, my first mountain was fucking awesome. Yeah. And now he is at peace. And that kind of character progression, which is why I kept talking about the book, like, which is why I think is like so fascinating. That kind of emotional journey is, I think, the better crux of a movie versus someone who's like, I'm going to get into med school. I'm like, cool, you're going to be fine without it.
It's also kind of a negative hero's journey because it's not returning to the original change because he is returning to the original change, but he's returning to the original, realizing that the original was a pretty good place to be to begin with.
Yeah. And maybe he even is just like, he's like, I'm about to go on a date and he's about to go on a date with his ex-girlfriend, right?
I mean, she can do better, but like largely, yes, right? I think that's very fun.
So right, Sam. We support women in this house, right? And
absolutely.
So like, but I would love like scenes for there to be like people are still gambling, they're still doing this, right? To this day, right? And he's just like, I'm good, we're good.
Yeah, I wash my hands of it. I'm done.
Yeah,
good. That's our movie. Let's talk about cast.
Our movie. Okay, there are so many talented Asian American actors out there of all different means. So like, I think the predominant cast should be Asian. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Right?
Which is what I did. I also very specifically did not. I specifically went Chinese American because a lot of them are Chinese American in the movie, or not in the movie, in the book and like the story, and that's who they're based on. So like, I was like, no, I'm not okay with Korean American. It needs to be Chinese American. And like, I don't know that it matters that hard, but like, I was like, I didn't know how specific you wanted to be in being representative of the people as they were. So, but I did my best.
I understand. Here's what I'll say about this. I think that for a lot of these characters, because they are second generation Asian American, many of them are also of mixed race. Like one guy is half Filipino and half white. There is also
Fisher in particular was very difficult.
Yeah. So like there were a lot of different things, and I think it's probably more important to be casting like Asian American in general versus like focusing necessarily on specifics because that is again part of the crux of the movie. I would say that probably for like the main character being Chinese American is relatively important because he has to play Japanese American or like a Japanese businessman and all of this other stuff, and that is I think like
sure,
you know,
but you got a gold star earlier, and I want a gold star for acknowledging that not all Asian people are the same.
That's very true, Sam. You do get a gold star.
Yeah. But let's talk about Ben. As we discussed, I'll tell you about my Ben first because I think the version of the character we have, I don't think is going to work with this casting anymore.
Okay.
But I found a guy who kind of like he's on his way up very much in the same way that Jim Sturgis was on his way up in the original movie. It's an actor named Ethan Dyson. He's like a random friend in Spider-Man Homecoming. He's in a movie called The Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete. He had like an episode in Children's Hospital. He's very much like at the beginning of his acting career, and he's kind of just like a young 19, 20-year-old kid.
All right. Dyson?
Dizon.
Dizon. Okay. Oh, he looks like he's like young enough. That was the other thing where all these people were like way too old and way too hot to be MIT grads. I'm so sorry.
Yes, correct. Like it was very hard. I was like, oh, this person, they're 43. Well, I can't cast them. So I was like very good about keeping people 25 and under.
Yep. I don't have a problem with this one either because there's so much discussion of like how like because all these MIT kids seem so nerdy, except for the girl who apparently was just like the girls were on a completely different setting, but like all these dudes were considered too nerdy, and so they were super overlooked. So I think that's a great, that would totally work with the casting.
Well, who did you have for Ben?
I didn't necessarily have anyone. I would have been like, whoever casting comes up with. Like,
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Let me ask you this. Did you take the time to do casting, or do you want me to just go through my casting options and then a stamp of approval, stamp of disapproval?
I think it's probably going to be that, because I was sitting there just being like, I mean,
Great.
whomever the casting would have.
So, got it. All right. So then let me tell you about Mickey, because he's kind of the other big main character. And there's really only one person we can go with to play this person who's in charge of gambling. And it is, of course, the god of gamblers himself, Chow Yun-fat.
Oh, I don't think he would agree, because apparently I think he has like a thing written in his contract of like he only plays heroes, and I don't think this is a hero character.
It's Ideal
But
Remake. We can get
You're
whoever
right. You're so
Like-
right.
Like, contracts aside, like if I was casting The Rock, I'd make him lose a fight. Like one of those sorts of things. Like whatever.
I would slightly disagree, only because I think Tony Leung would actually be a better casting, because look him up in Shang-Chi when he was wearing a brown double-breasted vest as he's walking through, and I was like, my dude, how are you making this look so good? Like,
Is he? How old is he?
he's like
He's 63. He looks good for 63. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you would rather go with Tony Leung, I'm happy to do that. I just thought it was kind of perfect because like he's the guy. Like Chow Yun-fat has played God of Gamblers.
Yeah. Tony Leung has this like quiet aura about him that makes him also more unassuming, but
Yeah,
also
right.
more deadly. So I was like, okay,
Absolutely.
that would be my thing.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to fight you on it. Let me tell you about my Jill, the white lady.
Okay.
I like, because there's like, you go and you can cast like the blonde cheerleader or something, but I wanted someone who was a little bit more like pensive and thoughtful. And so I went with an actress named Sophia Lillis. She was in Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. She's like the girl in It. She was in I'm Not Okay with This. She's a very good actress.
Yeah, I think that would totally work. I love the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
It's so fun.
I know.
The next is Fisher. And I wanted someone who could kind of play heel, but also be interesting in a charming way. And so I went with the actor Dallas Yu. Dallas was Zuko in the live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender. He's also in Shang-Chi. He's also in Pen 15.
Yes. Okay. That's great. Yeah. He seems like he was someone who could play many things. So
Exactly. He took me a while to find, but I was very happy to find him.
yeah. Oh man. How old is this guy?
23, I think.
They're all babies to me. They all look like children. Perfect. Great.
He is 24.
Babies. Perfect.
Yep. Basically, the way that I cast this is if their birth year starts with a 2, I was in good shape.
Pain, but yes, fair. I was at the pharmacy and some guy was like, "What's your birth year?" And he was like, 2002. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's weird and I don't like it.
I know.
I had a conversation when I went to Pokemon Worlds. I went to Worlds and I was doing like a Pokemon thing with a bunch of different people, and I had a conversation with a bunch of people around me, and I was like, "No, you guys don't understand. I was born in the 80s," and they were like, "What?"
Oh my God. Yeah, one year I remember I was dressed as Pokemon to hand out, candy for Halloween or whatever. And some like 7-year-old kid's like, "How do you know about Pikachu?" And I was like, "Excuse me? This is the house that Pikachu built, okay?"
I was there when it was written.
Right, I was there when Pikachu was a chubby rat. He wasn't even
Yeah.
important, okay? And
I remember a
was like,
world before Pokemon.
right? And I literally, I was like, I'm insulted by a 7-year-old thinking I don't know Pokemon? Sir.
Monsieur. Okay. So Choi, we didn't talk about this, but in the original movie, he's a kleptomaniac and stealing everything all the time.
Right? What the hell was that?
For the one person of Asian descent, I didn't like it. In our movie, like, fine, I don't care. Like, it's the gambling. The thing they're addicted to is the gambling. Like,
Yeah.
if he's going to be stealing stuff, he needs to be stealing stuff in a way that he could get caught, because that's another form of gambling. It's the thrill.
Yes.
And I can have him be a thrill seeker in a lot of different ways, but I don't want him, like, just stealing the Bible from the hotel room. Who gives a shit?
Right? I understand that they were like, we're going to try to make this a gimmick thing, but I remember just watching this and being like, I don't understand actually what's happening.
No, it's stupid. So I cast the kid from Fresh Off the Boat and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Hudson Yang.
Okay.
He's young.
Yeah. He's young. Right. Yeah. He's very tall, I think. Yeah. I feel like if we want a comedic Asian characters, there's just so many options now to choose from. So
Absolutely. Which brings me to Kiana, who was,
Oh, yeah.
she was great. I cast someone who has largely been a voice actress because she was the lead in Turning Red and in Suzumi and Sakamoto Days. Her name is Rosalie Chang.
Ah, okay.
And I thought she'd be great.
I think
She
so
obviously
too.
knows to be goofy, silly characters, and presumably can do that in live action because it seems like that's the way where she's headed regardless.
Yes. Also, 2005. Yep.
Yep.
Born
I'm
2005.
aware.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. So then I did cast Miles, the best friend, and for this, I made it a white guy.
Is it Josh Gad again?
It's not. I cast one of the Stranger Things kids. I cast Gaten Matasarazzo.
Yeah, he would be great.
Yeah, he's in Stranger Things. He's in Honor Society. It's fine. I could see him like feeling hard, but remember, we can't do that. It just occurred to me. We have to change this character because this needs
That's
to be
right.
the girlfriend.
This is the girlfriend
so
now.
we need a girlfriend. Who? I need you to Google 19-year-olds.
I don't like where this is going.
Well, we need to cast someone who's age appropriately dating Ethan Dyson.
Yeah,
And
that's
Ethan
true.
Dyson's like 20, so like we need a 20-year-old cute young girlfriend.
Yeah, you need someone who's a little younger. Elizabeth Yu. She, 2002. We're good. Yeah, and I think she would be a lovely, like, you know, second gen Asian Americans, just like, yeah, my boyfriend, I'm gonna go pick my boyfriend and he's gonna dump me at the fucking airport.
Perfect.
Yep, and then in the end, you're right, she could find someone better. But also it could end on him, he's like, you know, I'm gonna try to win her back.
Oh, she's Azula in Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live action one.
Yes.
Cool. Great.
So.
Elizabeth Yu. Love it. And then the other actor character I have is the Lawrence Fishburne character, like kind of the big, heavy. And I found an actor named Lamont Rucker. He's in Queen Sugar, Black Hamptons. He was a basketball player. Kind of a big guy, but he's like getting a little bit older. So I could see him like realizing that he kind of needs a retirement plan kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, no, that totally works. Someone with a little bit of gravitas because they've been around a little bit longer. And again, if it's like the 90s, we don't have to worry too about like the weird subplot of like the surveillance eyes or anything, and we can just get someone who is just like, I run the casinos. I did like that they had some, like, that was the one part about Lawrence Fishburne that I did really like when he was like, I'm a card counter, so I know when others are card counters. Just elevating, I think, what could have been more of a very stereotypical character of just like, you know, this like muscly consultant security guy to being like, yeah, this guy's really smart. He knows what's up. I did not love, again, the last minute turn of like, this is my retirement plan. I was like, all right, well, you know.
Yeah.
Good
I
and
like
bad.
the idea of like this guy running the back end and just being like, look, it's technically legal, but we're going to make you not want to do this anymore.
Yeah, get out. And, you know, his face is the one that shows up in Hong Kong. And they're like, how is this possible? And the world of Vegas is just small. The
true.
world of gambling is actually pretty small.
Yeah, they all
So-
talk to each other. So then that brings me to writer and director. And I have separate writer, separate director.
Okay, I think Sam Gasch, my friend, would be a great writer for this film. So I'm gonna put that name out there. So
Cool. Rejected. I wanted to go with an Asian woman.
oh yeah,
So I went with Lulu Wang, who wrote The Farewell, Expats, Posthumous.
absolutely. I would also consider Crazy Rich Asians Adele Lim. Yes.
So I went with the Crazy Rich Asians director. So I went with John M. Chu as the director. The reason why I did that is because that way we have the writing be the heartfelt, emotional, like pathos of it all.
Okay.
And then we have John M. Chu, who did Crazy Rich Asians, Wicked, In the Heights, Step Up 3D for the pizzazz and the style and the Vegas of it all. Like if you want someone to direct big, you get that director, and then the writer can do the emotional stuff is kind of what I was thinking.
Yes, I would accept him. However, I would also put in for Justin Lin because I still think Better Luck Tomorrow, which was like so, like I had to find that movie and track it down at Blockbusters because I was not born in the 2000s, right? He did Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, which is the best Fast and Furious. I'll fight anybody on this. Like he does True Detective, like he does like big dazzle stuff. And I also think that he can do that really weird world where your academics are everything, that kind of cutthroat world where everyone is fighting everyone, and that's the world that this guy grew out of and like crushed. I think that could add to it. So either of
And
those
so
choices
you want
would
him
be
to
great.
be the writer or the director?
The director. He could be an alternate, you know, in case, you know.
Done. Nope, done. It's happening. And then, but we're happy with Lulu Wang as the writer.
Yeah, of course.
Great.
She could do anything.
Then let me take you through our cast. 21. Ben is going to be Ethan Dixon. Mickey is going to be Tony Leung. Jill will be Sophia Lillis. Fisher will be Dallas Liu. Choi will be Hudson Yang. Kiana will be Rosalie Chang. Miles, the best friend, will be Gaten Matarazzo, and he will be dating Elizabeth Yu. Cole Williams will be Lamont Rucker. The writer is going to be Lulu Wang, and all of this will be directed by Justin Lin. That is 21.
That's
Shu,
21.
Going to be happier with this version of the movie?
I think so, because I think that this movie will have stakes that matter more than I got into med school with one singular scholarship they gave to the Korean guy with one leg, which was not even a good joke. So
No.
I think
Well,
this
if
is
you
a better
want
movie.
stakes that matter, you go to Vegas and you get them because they'll be fairly reasonably priced.
We should go to Vegas. That's, I think, also what I got out of this. I was like, should I go to
I got
Vegas?
nothing going on the rest of the day. I'm down for a road trip.
Hey, Sam, let's go to Vegas. That's a great
Yeah,
idea.
let's go. But before we do, we've reached the end of the episode. So, Shu, thank you so much for being on Ideal Remake. Before we leave, if there's anything you want to tell the listeners to do, follow on social medias or like watch or listen to, please let me know now.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for letting me interrogate you and scare you at a parking lot to let me be on this podcast that I have done like hours of research for. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this, and you continue to be my friend after this. You can find me on all socials at Hello There Shu, Hello There, my last name, X as in X-ray, U as in U-turn. I have a BlueSky, I have an Instagram, I technically have a Substack. Please don't follow that one, I don't know. And in terms of what I am like reading and looking at, you know, I've been listening to a lot of K-pop demon hunters like everybody else on earth. And I've been trying to think about my next spooky read because it's almost October. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Good. If anyone is interested in following me on Instagram, I am at Ideal Remake, or you can follow me on BlueSky at Sam Gasch, SamGasch. And if you think you know the correct count on the deck, please let me know on the Dueling Genre Discord, which has a link in the show notes of this very episode. But I will end this episode the same way I end every episode. Shu, what is your favorite quote from the movie 21?
It's gotta be, did I dazzle you? Did I jump off the page?
And of course, that's a perfect way to end this episode. In the same way we end the movie. Perfect.